Today I'm going to tell you the story about Frank and Mairobis. They are both from Cuba and they have 3 beautiful children. Frank and Mairobis are both doctors, cardiologists. What Cuba does is they contract out their doctors to different countries and make money off of them. Frank was contracted to Angola, where he worked among generals and colonels, really important people high up in the military. While he was there, he gained a deep love for the African people. He saw many things that really humbled him, and he realized that he wasn't the only one who had it tough in this life. Before taking the job in Angola, Frank had been promised $8,000 a month for his work there. But Cuba withheld lots of the money, and he was only paid $200. But Frank kept at it for only a few years. That was about the time Frank realized that he needed to leave. And so after his time was up in Angola, he went back to Cuba to spend some time with his family before he was contracted out again to Venezuela. In Venezuela, he was the personal doctor for President Hugo Chavez. While in Venezuela, he was only being paid $20 a week. Around this time, the U.S. was offering a program to certain people outside of the country with special skills. The only problem was that he had to make it to an American embassy, get a visa, and then go to the United States. There was no American embassy in Venezuela. The closest American embassy was in Colombia. Frank, realizing his opportunity for a better life for him and his family, he decided to leave. The bigger problem was that he was under constant surveillance. One day, Frank made the decision to go. He approached a taxi driver and asked him to take him to the border, which he replied no, he has a friend who can though. If he came back tomorrow, he could meet him. Frank was rooming with another Cuban doctor at the time as well, who didn't agree with those that were trying to leave. Frank said he packed his bag piece by piece that night, trying to make as little noise as possible. The taxi driver was waiting for him, and it was an 8-hour drive to the border. If you're not familiar with the border between Venezuela and Colombia, there's a bridge and a river that you have to cross. On any given day, the water is about waist deep, but the day before it had rained a lot, and so the water was up to his shoulders. At the border, Frank met 3 people who claimed to be professional border crossers, but they were there to help him. Because the water levels were so high, the border crosser had him walk up the path 50 feet so that when he got into the water, the current would take him right to him and the guy would catch him. 3 times he was almost swept away, and the water was very murky and dirty. When he got out of the water and got his things, he was covered head to toe in mud. But his journey didn't stop there. Frank still had to take a taxi to the nearest town, and from there take a bus to the city center, which was an 18-hour drive. He was afraid of the taxis because if anyone suspected him, even for a second, they could easily turn him into the nearest police station, as he was currently an illegal immigrant in Colombia. After the few days, he went to buy his bus ticket, where they asked to check his passport. The lady at the desk realized that he didn't have a visa to be in Colombia at the time and knew that he had crossed illegally, so she refused him a ticket. But while he was talking to her, the bus driver overheard the conversation and realized that he needed some help. Somehow, some way, he had some sympathy for him, and so he called him over and said, "Hey, I have this compartment in the back of my bus, which is normally a little place to sleep for us bus drivers. It's really small, but you can hide in there." Frank hid in this compartment, and he described it as a coffin. But the other fear was that throughout the city there were police barricades, which at any random time could stop your vehicle and check everyone on board to make sure that they weren't illegal. And this bus just so happened to be stopped by one of those barricades. He remembers overhearing the people talking about a police coming on board. Terrified, he left the compartment and hid in the bathroom. The policeman ended up knocking on the bathroom door. Not knowing what to do, he knocked back, signaling that it was occupied. And like that, the policeman just walked away. It was definitely a miracle. After 18 hours, Frank made it to the city center and went to the American embassy. Now during this time, his wife Mairobis and their 3 children were still in Cuba. Once Frank was in the U.S., he filed a reclamation form that would allow him to bring his family to the U.S., but Cuba wouldn't let them leave. As Mairobis was a doctor, she had useful skills that they didn't want to lose in Cuba. Eventually, they had the idea to write the Pope, the Catholic Church. They wrote him not once, not twice, but 3 times, and by their surprise, they were answered. Through the Catholic Church, Mairobis and the children were able to go to the U.S. For about the first year, they lived in Florida, trying to save money and figure out their new life. Realizing it wasn't the best place for them, they decided to relocate to Las Vegas, Nevada, where they just so happened to stumble upon Lighthouse Charities, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that helps refugees and immigrants. It was by random that they walked in the door one day, and I happened to be there. They had been referred to us by Catholic Charities to receive clothing for their family, so I helped each of them find their clothing that they needed. At this time, we had just started our newest job program called the Register Project, where we offered a safe training ground for non-English speakers to gain job experience, learn English, and prepare for employment. Frank and Mairobis were determined to receive their medical certificate once again, and so they were studying day in and day out. And they realized that the English classes would be really beneficial to them, as they needed to learn English. So about a month later, they came back and asked if they could join the program, which of course we accepted them. We became friends with them and really learned to love them. We loved their character. They were so humble, and yet they didn't want to become dependent on anyone, and they wanted to figure it out for themselves. During the few months that they were with us, Mairobis had been suffering from headaches, blurry vision, and hand tremors. She didn't know what was wrong though. After going to the doctor and receiving a few tests, they found a brain tumor about the size of a golf ball on the back of her skull. As a team here at Lighthouse, but even more so as a family, we decided to start a fundraiser to help cover any medical and educational costs. Frank and Mairobis are a special kind of people, the ones that really want to become an asset to the community. They want to utilize their skills here in the U.S. and become doctors again, but they can't do that without our help, without your help. So in some small way, if you're able to contribute to this fundraiser, it would not only mean the world to us, but to them. And if you're not able to contribute, then come volunteer with us. You can go on our website at www.lighthousecharities.net. We help hundreds, if not thousands, of others just like them. Their inspiring journey has touched me personally, and I have come to love them as friends and family. I stand with refugees. We all stand with refugees here at Lighthouse. If you stand with them as well, then please get involved. There is little awareness of what is going on in other countries, especially Cuba. And yet many of them are fleeing safety and coming here for a better life. How can we turn them away? How can we not open our hearts to them and realize that we can help them? Even if it's in some small way, to them it means the world. Lighthouse has created a safe place for these refugees and immigrants alike. We will never stop the work that we are doing here in Las Vegas. We will never stop loving these families. We will never stop supporting them and helping them and serving them. I stand with refugees, and I always will.